Hi! Welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to paint a Magellanic Penguin with watercolor, and at the end of the video I will show you what I do after painting. Hi, I'm Annie, a self-taught artist on a journey to learn to draw and share my process, progress, and what I've learned since I decided to draw a few years ago. You can follow my process during this video or just lean back and enjoy the cozy music. Before I started painting, I made a few sketches of the penguin, picked a few colors for the painting and checked the values by using a black and white filter on the photo of the swatches. In my last videos I talked a bit about pushing the colors of the reference photos and how I don't really use black in my watercolor paintings. This time this was extra important because a penguin is literally just black and white. The white is the paper and I don't use black, so we have to be creative. After checking the values of my Kuretake Gansai Tambi palette, I picked indigo and cobalt violet to be my black because they are the darkest colors. I wanted to use both colors to give some variety to the dark parts, and these colors have similar values, so they worked out really well. For the first layer, I wanted to have a nice blend of these two colors, so I used the wet on wet technique to help me mix them. Wet on wet means that we have a wet surface and we paint the pigment on it. In this case, I used clean water to wet the areas where I wanted my paints to play, and I applied some more concentrated paint to them. The biggest mistake with this technique is not using enough pigment, because the wet surface makes the paint quite diluted and mutes the colors. And we don't want that, right? The best thing about wet on wet is that we can mix the different colors super smoothly. The gradient between indigo and violet is almost invisible. Another benefit is that we can work in small parts of the painting, and while the paints have the freedom to run on the page, they can only go where we wet the paper. One trick I use with wet on wet is that after blending the colors and getting the desired result, I remove some of the extra water from the paper. I do this by dabbing a dry brush on the overflow part of the paint. I let the brush soak in some water and dry the brush with a towel, and then rinse and repeat. After everything dried, I went over the dark parts again, layering a mix of indigo and violet on the darkest areas. On the second layer we cannot use wet on wet again, because excessive water would reactivate the first layer of watercolor and we would lose the lovely gradient. So this time we use wet on dry, which means painting on a dry surface. At this step, I not just darkened some parts, but also started to add details of the penguin. I'm not a penguin expert, so I'm not sure how their feathers work, but I can see from my reference image that the feathers are thick and short on the adults, and a bit scaly, not fluffy like on other birds. I also think there is some oil or wax on them to make them water repellent, so the penguins appear a bit shiny all the time. I try to show this by leaving some parts of the black area white, or at least really light, because that's the thing with shiny things, they are very contrasty. After adding the dark details, I painted the beak in a light pink because my reference had a similar color. I like this pink so much, it was Butter's pink I think, that I decided to brighten up the lighter side of the penguin with this color. So everything the light touches or at least what the direct light hits in the reference image, got a light pink hue, while I left the white parts untouched. And what about the shadowy place? For the shadows, I left the dark indigo parts as they are, because, remember, indigo is the new black for this painting, and making the shadows blacker would diminish the other black parts of the painting. So I only added shadows to the white parts, choosing a very diluted ultramarine. A few tiny details to make the silhouette a bit fluffier, and we are almost done with the painting. For the eye, I used a Posca pen again, and I also added some highlights with it. And we are done with the painting. I really like it. The indigo and violet mix works really well. While I was initially afraid to paint the blue shadow on the white belly, it really gives the penguin a more 3D look. Okay, so we are done with the painting. What do we do with it? I will show what I did with every paintings for this Birbfest challenge. First things first, we wait until they are completely dry. This time I removed the masking tape only the next day to make sure it's super dry. After that, I scan the painting. The watercolor paper is quite thick and bends somewhat if you don't stretch the paper before painting on it, which I never do. So it's important to make the paper super flat in the scanner. The scan is great because the digital version has almost all the information you need for a post or a print, but you have to mind for it. To be honest, I would prefer to take high quality photos of my drawings, but I don't have a professional camera and, more importantly, not a professional lighting system with my deposer. So a scan it is. After scanning, I crop the page and then start to edit it. I use the built-in Photos app on my MacBook, which does its job for basic photo editing and color correction. In Photos, I try out all the settings, and for watercolor paintings, what I usually do is leave the exposure and brightness as they are, but I take the contrast down a bit and bring up saturation quite a lot. After all this, I send the exported version to my phone. Well, Instagram changed the frame size in the middle of Birbfest, but I don't care. I wanted a uniform look for the birds, so I added a border to all the paintings to make them square. For this I use the In-Frame app, which has a ton of options, but I only use the background function where you can choose a single color or a color gradient for the background. And after this, the only thing left is to pause the painting, and that's it! By the time I'm making this voiceover, this penguin is my most popular watercolor painting ever on Instagram, So we can say all this work was worth it. I would love to hear your thoughts on my blue and purple penguin. Let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and check out my coffee link in the description below to support my art journey. Thank you for watching. Bye!